So the name of my organization is Family. It's a long name, Family and Community Engagement Services Inc. But I go by FACES, and that is what we do. We try to support organizations um, prom, prom, in promoting better engagement with communities and with individuals, so that everyone can reach their just and full potential. So recently, I just did with the support of Verizon organization a diversity, equity, inclusion framework with Ulster County.
Oh, cool. And do
So
you have a website that we should let people
yeah,
know about?
it's New York Faces at no NewYorkFaces.com. I'm just getting used to it. We just sort of launched it a couple of months ago. So it's
Cool.
NewYorkFaces.com.
And New York spelled out?
No, I'm sorry, NYFaces.com.
Okay.
www.nyfaces.com.
Cool. Hey, Erin, you're on mute.
It's like
I
multiple.
mute everyone when they come in.
That's
And
smart. That's smart. And hi, Mr. Lawson. We haven't met yet, but we're going to meet next week.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think for our CAP meeting is.
Okay. Okay. Yes. 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 That's next week.
I know it goes quick.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's exciting, but it also is overwhelming at the same
It
time.
is. It's a lot.
So,
It's a lot.
but what Chuck and Mary and I have talked about, and Victoria is now going to serve as a secretary,
Okay.
is that they did the hard work of sort of creating this operating procedure,
Mhm.
and now we get to bring it to life, and we get to sort of use it to work better with the rack, right? So
Good.
we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, and we're hoping that this will help get the health study going, and if we can get COVID under control, so we can get in and recruit people. And,
Yeah. So one of the things Tamsin and I were talking about was the notion of using other, not reinventing the wheel, right? So the school district is there and they have a website. The all of the municipalities that are impacted have websites. So why not use them to sort of get the message out about the rack? I took the liberty of looking at the city of Newburgh's website, and while they have a landing page that speaks to the rack, it's really not up to date. And so Tiff and I talked about how we can better communicate with the city, maybe have them link to the rack website that she's maintaining, and
and that's what we're doing too with the university. We have the PFAS health study website through UAlbany, but we've also linked and will link with the DOH website, and we can definitely link to all of the other the school district website, anything that people want us to link to, and vice versa. That we can do, and we have a Facebook page too for the same.
so Tamsin, what do you think about the link to your landing page on your website with what Erin is just saying? Because I think that
sorry,
would be
I was adminning. So, Erin, what are you planning? I mean, we're happy to have. Right now, the rack is a tab on our website, so you still have to go search for it. It's not Newburgh Clean Water Project and right up front.
Right. So this would be, so for the health study, we have a website set up for the health study that's just linked to the University of Albany, and we have a full page. And then we also have a Facebook page. And we're linking, DOH is almost ready with their PFAS focused website that will have all of the DOH activities, including the health study, but everything else as well. And we'll link to each other, but we can link to your site. You can link to our site. I mean, we're happy to share those links, and we have a pfas@albany.edu email that my staff monitor, because I have full-time staff on this, and they can monitor questions and put people out there. We can do whatever people want to facilitate communication in that way, and so we're happy to do that.
And that's something that we do not have, Ed. I mean, let's talk more fully about it.
Mm-hmm.
For my vintage business, I got my domain name, and it automatically goes to a larger site with more traffic.
Right.
So that's something that we could think about too, is getting Newburgh RAC or Newburgh Restoration Advisory Committee, and then it automatically diverts to Erin's site or our tab.
And we can do the same with yours. We're doing that with, we have different sections, and every time there's an event, anytime there's an announcement or a webinar that people can go to, we're trying to keep that up to date, because again, I have staff that can just update things quickly. We're going to have a monthly update of the literature that hopefully will be ready to get put. We have a meeting tomorrow with the web people that know how to format things so that it's readable. And we're going to do that and have that permanently up there. So we're just updating literature as it comes out. And so people can scroll and then email us with questions, and we can do Q&As as people need them. If we're getting a lot of questions about one topic, for example, I can put up there a webinar or Zoom for Q&A. So anything like that. And so we can definitely add events and workshops, and we have the Facebook page to do the same.
Yeah, so you guys were just talking Greek to me just now, but I guess to your point, Erin, whatever we can do to get the message out to those sort of greater websites, and just to be better able to engage with the community. And then, my experience with Facebook, I worked for the federal government once, and we had over 250,000 followers at one point. And what we did was we engaged them in the conversation, or we joined conversations. And so, I want to talk about what we can do to get the word out by any means necessary, whether it's Facebook, because what's happening right now is, first of all, well, let me take a step back. The language is just way over everybody's head, right? And so it's like fatigue. I'm not reading this, and I don't care to read it. Tell me if I can drink the water, or So I think that's another thing that I'm hoping that when we talk next week, we can get to that piece where we can start, making this information digestible for, the average citizen, because otherwise you're only going to get certain type of people that log in and want to be engaged. I think that's number one. But then number two, also creating the access, right? Right now, as Tamsin indicated, you got to go through some things just to get the information. I want to try to make it as accessible as possible.
Streamlined, yeah. I'm very worried that we're not reaching everybody that needs to be reached. And so I want to, and one of the questions I'm going to have for the members at the CAP, and it will be an open meeting for others to attend, is how best to get out there and reach the communities, especially this year when everyone's just so overwhelmed with everything else that's happening. And it might be particularly worried and stressed, and just have so much on their plate. But we also want to make sure people have the opportunity and understand what we're doing, so that they can participate and ask questions and get the information they need with that. So that would be really helpful, and just ideas on how to reach all the different community organizations and community members, so that people feel comfortable and not intimidated, because the language is hard, and trying to make it so that it doesn't seem so overwhelming and too much, and make it and answer people's questions directly.
Right. So it's I guess there's a couple of things. First of all, creating access, and also creating sort of digestible documents, so that people, and then also engaging in more conversation, because people don't want to come and read a dissertation every time they come to your website. So I think making it in sort of bite-sized pieces. One thing Tamsin and I talked about last time was both her notion and mine about this being really about environmental and social justice. So that's a different lane in conversation that people might perk up and listen to. That if you're talking in terms of environmental social justice, you're not getting waylaid in PFAS, and all this other jargon. So
and I think that's so critical. And again, everything we look at in environmental health is almost always tied to social justice and environmental injustice, and it's in making sure that we can, you know, work with communities to help eliminate those injustices and the disparities that we see.
Right.
So being responsive, and I keep saying over and over, information is power, and so I'm trying to provide these conduits so people can ask questions and feel safe asking questions and getting the information they need.
I totally, I mean, I subscribe to that. And what I guess in my work now, what we're saying is access to resources and information, but also to how to navigate those resources and information, because you can get to it, but we got to get through it. And because if you can't, you know, there's these wonderful resources, but if you can't engage them, that's not true access, right? In order to have true access, you have to be able to engage it in a meaningful way. And if you can't, then that's, you know, it's just a
another
trophy.
barrier, right?
Yeah.
It's another barrier, and then discourages people. And so that's what and the reason we need a team effort to do this is it might not jump out at me or others that is a barrier. So, because it seems natural to us if you're in it. And so trying to make sure we get the feedback so that we can reduce those barriers and make it accessible. You know, I suppose that I've been watching my kids try to learn remotely the last few weeks, and you learn a lot and about ourselves, but it's, trying to make sure people can get the information they need and be able to navigate it and feel comfortable and you know, empowered by doing it.
So I like, I want to explore more the notion of creating these lunch and learns, these webinars, these sort of bite-sized conversations so that people can, or even if we produce, you know, short videos about what's going on, and blast that out on Facebook and other mediums. I think that's really important because otherwise people will not be engaged. And I think we need to be really, we have to approach this differently. So now that we have the operating procedure down, Chuck always shares with me that these you know, the government is, so we said our population, Tamsin and I were laughing about this last time, our population is over 50% Spanish speaking.
Yeah.
But they won't translate the information into Spanish. And one of the goals that we have specifically is that we get the information out to people in layman's terms. That's a goal that we have. And how do you do that if you're not translating the information? And they said, we don't have the money. And I'm like, what? Like, so I guess
they're so poor.
Yeah, right. You know, and it's almost like, oh, well, I know we're supposed to be remediating. I know we've been polluting for 40 years. Oh, well, so sorry, you know, okay. No, it's not okay. And you know, and that's where that social environmental justice piece comes in, because if people start putting pressure on them, not the RAC members, but like if we let the public know, and the public starts talking to their legislators and saying, hey, look, this is not right. We have an interim stormwater management system that gets shut down if we have too much rain. So that means it can let the good times roll with the contaminants.
Into the river, right? Yeah.
You know, so that's like unacceptable, and it wouldn't happen in certain zip codes.
No, that's right. I mean, I can always, so our building's in Rensselaer, which is not on the wealthy side of the river, and I came in the other day, it smelled, but it's whenever there's a big melt or big, you know, rainstorms, the CSO's open and everything goes into the river, and it's not a pleasant experience. But what this is very helpful, because one of the things I have, and one of the questions I have next week, is how do people access us, and you know, what do people have access to? Are they using Facebook, or are they using something else? And you know, is our website accessible, or are there other means, especially in these, you know, since we're still in kind of a restricted travel mode? And I like the idea very much of doing some YouTube videos and having a YouTube channel. I mean, I think we can add those links to a website if people have accessibility. We're translating everything we do into Spanish and Haitian Creole, but we also want to learn if that's enough, if there are other things we should be doing, other translations we should do. My students are good because they're those that they speak Haitian Creole in particular with their families, because they'll tell me they're like, that word doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You need to like
So
come up with a better one. So
I've coined this phrase that I call it transcreation and not translation. And the notion is that each culture, each ethnicity has these little nuances. Like you just said, your student said, that doesn't mean that. And I think that this language, this information, if we're really serious about layman's terms, it should be transcreated, not translated.
oh, that's a good, I like that. Yeah, no, you're right. We I worked on another study. There was a national study on birth defects, and it included California and New York, and the translations were done in California. And when my staff member, who was Dominican, looked at it, and she's like, this translation doesn't make sense for the people in New York that we're recruiting, and because it's just so different with again where families had their heritage and what they were their own language, and there is such. But I like the transcreation term. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so you can use it. I give you.
Well, I will acknowledge you. I like that. Is perfect because you do see these differences, and I think making sure again, I want to be responsive. We don't want to make people feel like they're not included and that we're not listening. We understand that we need to listen and to be able to be responsive to what people need.
Right. So just so I'm clear, I thought that the study was, so what is the study? Like what?
So the study is you'll hear a lot of terminology, but you'll hear multi-site study, and that's what this is. So this is a health study funded by CDC, and there are 7 states that are funded, and New York is one. And in New York, we will be recruiting residents of Hoosick Falls and Newburgh and into the study. And our goal is to recruit 1,000 adults and 300 children. And we will look at, in this study, child neural development, but we'll also be looking at the other clinical markers of concern. So related to lipids, cholesterol, markers related to kidney and testicular cancer, thyroid function, the things that we're concerned about with these chemicals and what these long-term exposures might have done if there is an association with these other outcomes. And the reason we're doing 7 states is that we'll be able to do analyses with the New York data on our own, but then we will also combine our data with all 7 states, because that gives us more, from a research standpoint, a greater statistical power to look at all the different subcategories and different types of perfluorinated chemicals. Now, a couple of things. People will get the report of what we measure in their blood and in their urine. And we are also allowed to do what we're calling investigator studies or New York specific studies. So we have a couple proposals related to that, one of which will be if people have given birth to a child in the 2 communities in the last 20 years. The health department has every baby before they're discharged from the hospital, when they're born, has a newborn blood spot taken to test for diseases that need to be diagnosed. And with consent, those are stored over time at the health department, and with consent from the parents, we can actually measure these chemicals in the newborn babies. And that'll help us understand exposure over time with families. So that's one thing, for example. We're trying hard now to fight for looking at an antibody measurement in people who enroll in our study who have gotten the COVID vaccine. And so we're lobbying to do that, since most of our people, by the time we start recruiting for this study, they would hopefully, fingers crossed, would have had their COVID vaccine. And so we want to be able to measure that and then give them a report of what the antibody is. And so that's what we're working on now. So that's in a nutshell what the study is. There's lots of components to it, but that's an overview of it.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, Deborah. Hi, Deb. You have to unmute yourself to be heard.
Hey, Tamsin.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I'm hoping I thought I was early. Supposed to start at 6, right?
It's supposed to start at 6, and you let everyone in, so let's say hi to everyone.
Yes.
Not all of our
everybody
speakers are in yet. So we'll be officially starting in about 8 to 10 minutes, guys. If you bear with us while we go through our technical stuff. Deb opened the gates for us.
I'm admitting as many people as possible. Everybody's admitted so far.
Right.
Hi, okay. I'm going to the restroom. I'll be right back. Can you hear me?
We certainly can. Hey, okay. How are you?
Good, good.
So everyone's getting to see a little bit backstage right now.
You know what? I think I'm going to mute everybody, Tamsin, and maybe
is muted unless they've unmuted themselves.
Yes, I'm just going to mute them, and maybe you can announce at some point.
Actually, let's you and I just have a little confab. I'm going to message you.
All righty. Thank you.
It's not letting me message you. I'm going to text you. Hey everyone, we have a few minutes before we officially start, but I thought it might be a nice moment to go around and meet each other, introduce yourself, and let us know where you're from. My name is Tamsin. I'm from Newburgh Clean Water Project. And I see a lot of faces that I haven't seen here before. Virginia, where are you from? You'll have to unmute yourself.
I'm Virginia from the Newburgh Urban Farm and Food Initiative. We have the Downing Park Urban Farm.
Welcome, Virginia. There's Angela. Alexi, we have emailed each other, but introduce yourself to everyone. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm Alexi, and I am a Bard College student from the area, but I have been to Newburgh before. I live in Tivoli.
Welcome. Chuck Thomas, are you there? Have to unmute yourself, Chuck. Let's move on to Elisa Grimm. Unmute yourself and let us know who you are and where you're from.
Hello, I'm Elisa Grimm. I'm with the University of Albany.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Steve Mahano, I see you there, but I don't see your beautiful face. Welcome. Unmute yourself. Introduce yourself.
Hey, Tamsin. Hello, everyone. How you guys doing this evening? I'm here not only as a Newburgh resident, but here representing Representative Maloney.
Excellent. Congratulations, Stephen.
Thank you.
And Ronald, are you there?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ronald with Outdoor Promise, also part of the Downing Park Board. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming. And Michelle.
Oh, hi. Hi, I'm Michelle Smith. I'm the Executive Director of Hudson Highlands Land Trust, and we work on land conservation issues in the Hudson Highlands area. Hi, everyone.
Hi, welcome. I think Ed Lawson and Erin Bell are here. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Erin Bell. I'm from the University at Albany.
And Ed, are you there? We can circle back to Ed in a second, and Chuck as well. So I wanted to open our first meeting of 2021 with a moment of taking a very deep breath and having a great exhalation. And I know no one better than Angela Shapiro to help us with that. And she's offered to do some sound bowl for us. So if we just allow her to do her wonderful thing, I'm going to pass it over to her and we'll get started with some of the speakers in about 5 minutes. Angela, over to you. Unmute yourself, please.
Hello, hello. Oh, it's so nice to see everyone. It's so nice to see everyone without masks. It's just so beautiful. So yeah, we're gonna do a little sound bowl. So I know everybody had such a day already filled with words, already filled with sensory. So we're just going to play and just try to get a little metaphysics in, get the static out, and just have a wonderful meeting. All right? Let me know if I can hear me okay. Turn it up. I'll go like right next to it. All the four winds.
So this is galvanized crystal from Germany. Sound has been around forever and it plays very well with water. So that's all I got. Here, start.
Thank you, Angela. Welcome, everyone. I'm just checking. We haven't all been introduced, but I'm sure we will get to know each other over the course of the meeting tonight. I think we're an intimate enough group that we'll be able to communicate. You're all on mute for the moment. If you want to speak, raise your hand. I will definitely call on people, and then you'll have to unmute yourself to speak. So 2021, here we are. Welcome. I think at the beginning of this year, when we were thinking about what will our first meeting of the year be, we felt so overwhelmed by the multiplicity of issues that 2020 exposed for us. Food insecurity in Newburgh, housing insecurity, obviously the toxic water, toxic in more than one way, our polluted air, our polluted soil. It just becomes overwhelming. So this is an invitation to work through all these layers. I think as an environmental justice community, one thing that 2020 taught us is that trouble doesn't come in singles, it comes in multiples. And that's why we're creating this platform tonight for some of our community leaders to really speak about how they've been approaching these issues this year, and to learn from them. So thanks so much for coming. Erin Bell, I'm actually going to start off with you. Dr. Bell is an environmental epidemiologist and professor at the University of Albany School of Public Health. Her research interests include examining environmental exposures and infant and child health and development. She's co-PI, I don't know what that means, but we're going to ask her, of the New York site for the PFAS multi-site health study funded by the CDC, which is here in Newburgh. She was recently appointed to the National Academy of Sciences Committee on Guidance on PFAS testing and health outcomes. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're always so delighted to hear updates from you. So something I think that's been on a lot of people's mind has been the potential effects of PFAS toxicity in conjunction with COVID-19. Are there any updates that you can tell us about that?
I can tell you a few. So the perfluorinated chemicals, and as I think most of you know by now, there are many different types of perfluorinated chemicals, but there has been some literature in the past, and in fact, the National Toxicology Program has stated that these perfluorinated chemicals can have an impact on our immune systems. And there are two ways to do that. One is to impact or impede the ability of a vaccine in your body to launch an antibody response, so to make you more immune, which is the point of a vaccine. So to lessen the effects of a vaccine, and there's concern that the perfluorinated chemicals can do that. Most of that literature has been in children. We don't know as much in the adults. There have only been a handful of studies looking at adults. And then the other avenue that there might be of concern with the immune system is that could it possibly make us more susceptible to certain diseases because of that exposure. The animal literature, studies in animals have suggested that both of those scenarios are possible. And as I mentioned, the studies in children have suggested that in looking at measles vaccine, tetanus, and diphtheria, that the children, the protectiveness of the vaccines was lessened. It wasn't at zero for the children that were exposed to perfluorinated chemicals, but it was lessened or less effective compared to children that didn't have as much exposure. So the question has been, does this also happen in adults? A couple of studies have looked at adults, and there's a new one out by Dr. Grandjean, who also did the child studies that looked at adults in Denmark. It's still under review. There's a suggestion. He did not see an association with the perfluorinated chemicals that we think that we have been detected in the water in Newburgh. But he did see an association with a newer type, what we call the short chain perfluorinated chemicals. And these are just the newer versions of these perfluorinated chemicals. Generally speaking, there's more that we don't know than what we do know. We are concerned. So one of the things that I have been lobbying for, I was actually on a call today, with the health study that we plan to launch in Newburgh and Hoosick Falls later this spring and summer, we're going to add a component that will allow us to look at antibody response in those who have had the COVID vaccine. Because we don't know if the perfluorinated chemicals have had an impact or would lessen the effectiveness of a vaccine, including the COVID vaccine. We're also actively working on a grant submission now that would also obtain funding for a new study to look at this hypothesis in adults, again, in Newburgh and Hoosick Falls, so a more in-depth study in addition. So we're doing some things now that would allow us to not only study that, but to give people the results of those tests so that they would know what their antibody response was if they did receive the vaccine. As of now, because we don't have, there is no direct evidence that the perfluorinated chemicals would have had or make someone less responsive to a COVID vaccine, but it's something that we are all going to monitor and certainly let you know if we learn more. But right now, the recommendation is to obviously get vaccinated if you are able, and to get the 2 vaccines for the 2 that are out there now that do require the double vaccine, and to at least have that assurance, and that we'll continue to measure this in the communities.
Dr. Bell, I found it interesting that the specific chemical that was cited in the study was one that had been more or less discounted by epidemiologists because it seemed to disappear from the body quite quickly. Didn't it gather in the lungs? And that's how he found that it did have some.
Right. I don't necessarily agree with that discounting. So with the typical progression that we see in environmental epidemiology with chemicals is that when we first start studying a chemical that is persistent, that's what these perfluorinated chemicals are. They stay in our body a long time. So it can anywhere from 3 to 8 years or even longer for half of what's in our body to be excreted. And often the mindset is we'll ban the chemical or reduce the chemical and replace it, and then a new chemical comes along and it's not as persistent. It's considered either non-persistent or less persistent. It's excreted within days. The half-life's on the marker of days, which is what these new shorter chain chemicals are. However, as we've seen with pesticides, as I think we might see as we look at shorter chains, it doesn't necessarily mean they're less of a concern with regards to health outcomes. We still have to study them because the challenge, even though they're not in our bodies a long time, if you're still getting exposed on a regular basis, you still have constant exposure. These types of chemicals that are less persistent also tend to still mimic hormones and be endocrine disruptors, so that means there's still a concern. We've seen this with plastics, so phthalates and BPA, which are chemicals we find in plastic materials, are not persistent. They're excreted very quickly, but we still are concerned that there's an adverse health outcome with it. So even though the mindset is if something's not as persistent, it's healthier, it doesn't mean it's not without risk. And so that's what we're still trying to understand. So one of the newer chemical that was in this new paper that is poised to come out is on a list. We have kind of a secondary list of perfluorinated chemicals we're very interested in. And if we can develop really good laboratory methods that are certified, we will add them in our study and look at them. And in fact, with these newer chemicals, when chemicals are not persistent, we tend to measure those in the urine. And that's what we would do with a multi-site study. We're going to ask for both a blood sample and a urine sample. And that's one of the reasons we would ask for that.
Very good. So can you update us a little bit about what's happening with the multi-site study right now?
Right, sure. So with the multi-site study, the immediate event that's going to happen in both communities, we've asked for volunteers from the communities to serve on our advisory panels. So we have and we call it a CAP, it's what the CDC has termed it. So we have volunteers on these advisory panels, and we will have our first joint meeting next week to update the advisory panels on the study, but also gather some feedback. All of our CAP meetings will be open to the public. We will have also videotape them and have those on our website. Our website, by the way, is albany.edu/sph/PFAS. And all of the talks that we give, if we have slides, we post them. We translate everything into Spanish and Haitian Creole. We also have regular announcements. So if we learn of a workshop or a webinar that might be of interest to the community, we will post those to the website, as well as literature that is updated and recently released. And so we hope to get the literature up next week. That's our immediate goal. Right now, in terms of recruitment for the study, obviously with COVID, we had to push things back. We're developing protocols. We had to add extra safety protocols to keep people safe as we bring them in. Our plans right now are to begin recruiting for the study early summer, late spring, early summer, with the clinic visits, which it'll be a one-time visit for the adults, and then the children will also be asked to come in and do developmental assessments, which are done on a laptop and with support from study participants, and we'll begin those in late summer. One of the things we'll ask for the CAPS feedback on, we're identifying space in both communities where we can host these clinics, so it's easy for people to get to. And so that we can schedule these interviews and the clinic visits at a time that's convenient for families and to travel to. And we will also be hiring people to help us with this study, a handful of positions in both communities. And once those announcements are ready, we'll be advertising for assistance there, for study assistance in terms of phlebotomists and people to help with the actual questionnaire administration and things like that. And again, also potentially some volunteer opportunities, particularly for high school and college students. We hope to have a program there, so if they want to learn more about the science, we can provide that opportunity.
I believe there is a phlebotomy program right here in Newburgh.
Yes.
So we can work on that.
That would be great.
I have a question from Jess Mullen. She asks, can you tell us briefly about the center that you work for? You're at?
Oh, at the University at Albany?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I'm a professor at the School of Public Health, and I'm in two departments, epidemiology as well as environmental health. It's a little scary to think about this. This is my 19th year here. And I was trained in University of Massachusetts at Amherst, as well as University of North Carolina. And I teach undergraduates and graduate students. And then I also do research. The School of Public Health is a partner with the New York State Department of Health. So many of our faculty here also have positions at the health department, but my primary my position here is fully at the
Sorry, did someone have a question? I have a question for you, Dr. Bell. So regarding circling back to PFAS and the vaccinations, Anthony Grice can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we've really had any vaccination clinics available right in the city of Newburgh. Is that something perhaps that we could reach out to the Department of Health with you regarding?
Yeah, I can look. I don't know, and that's a great question. I don't know what the plans are for Newburgh, but I can certainly ask the health department. And another good place to ask as well is the county health department for Orange County. But I would hope there will be sites, but I can definitely explore that and reach out to people to find out what the plans are as they launch these additional sites for vaccination. One of the concerns I know up here in Albany has been, even if there's a drive-in site, we still need to be able, they're opening up sites at the churches and at community centers that are in the communities where people don't drive or have easy access. So that's an excellent question. And it was actually a question on my mind, if you had vaccination sites yet. So let me find out what the plans are.
Dr. Bell, I noticed that they were advertising. I don't know whether Crystal Run actually got any vaccine or not, but that was advertised as a potential site. That is a bus drive away, whereas Cornerstone is right here in the city of Newburgh, or the Armory would be an amazing place to have a vaccination clinic, walkable for most.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So I can dig around. And your earlier question on what a co-PI is, that was my fault. That just stands for co-principal investigator. Principal investigator is just the scientific term for the lead of a study with that.
And Anthony is saying that St. Luke's and Cornerstone, I know that St. Luke's did vaccines for their medical staff.
Right.
So question for you from Ed Lawson, how does your work intersect with the Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities Prevention?
So that's an excellent question. So my work in general, I do work with that office, and certainly I teach environmental justice in my classes, and other projects that I have right now are exploring health disparities. There is a program at the office with the county health department in Orange County through the office to look at health disparities, and it's on our list to actually contact them because we haven't formally been in communication with each other about this study, and we're very interested in actually reaching out and working with them and getting their feedback. So that is something on my to-do list, and it was one of the questions I was going to ask at the CAP meeting. So you've actually already answered my question. So we'll reach out to the folks at the county because we're very interested in hearing what work they're doing and how we can work together.
Terrific. So the takeaway for everyone in the meeting, if they would like to keep an eye on what you're doing in terms of the health study, or even get involved, even apply for a job, they should check that website, Albany EDU.
That's right. And we have our Facebook information is on that website. We also have a specific email. It's pfas@albany.edu. So if you're interested on being added to our listservs and being added to our contact list, you are welcome to email us, and as well as if you have just general questions, and we can get those answered for you. Again, all of our meetings will be announced on those pages, and recordings and links to the videos will be there as well.
That's great, and we will definitely Newburgh Clean Water Project. We'll definitely keep our eye on that and share that. Any information coming up as well. And thank you so much for all of your work. So here we are. This is at that moment where we have these layers of toxicity in our community, because we're going to move from PFAS now to a much older toxin that a lot of you will be familiar with and have experience with, which is lead. And as a lot of you know, we're a historical district. There is lead in our paint, and there's lead in our water pipes. And we had a great program last year where a certain amount of homeowners were able to get their old lead water pipes removed, but the funding for that ran out very, very quickly. So we are still looking in Newburgh at many households that are still dealing with lead in their water. I'm going to let the experts explain why we're taking this action, but late in 2020, early January 2021, Newburgh Clean Water Project joined with United Parents Against Lead, the NAACP, and Sierra Club to take the EPA to court for relaxing their rules on lead in water. And I'd like to introduce you to Gabrielle Hill. Those of you who don't know Miss L, I don't think there's many of you that don't know her. She's a 5th generation Newburgher. She is our #1 Newburgh diplomat. And I'm going to let her introduce herself. Gabrielle, welcome.
Tamsin, thank you, and Happy New Year, everyone. All the best to you. I am Gabrielle Hill. My grandparents came north in the late 40s, early 50s. My grandfather worked various jobs, Marlboro Farms, and I believe it was late 50s, he became a laborer at Local 17. They bought their first house on Liberty Street, and we've been here ever since. So I love Newburgh, the changes. Yeah, I just love Newburgh. But anyway, I have a story regarding the lead in water. Back in, I believe it was 99 or 2000, my middle daughter, she was about 18 months old, and I wanted to go back to work part-time. So we walked up the hill, North Street, and I found that the Dairy Mart was looking for a cashier early in the morning from 5:30 a.m. until about 10:30 or 11. And I was excited because it was perfect hours, location I could walk to, and it just really fit in my schedule. The only thing was I needed to find daycare for her. So there was a woman on Liberty Street that was willing to do it, but she required lead testing for my baby girl. So we did the test. The results came back maybe a week or two, but I had already started my job. And I got a call from Orange County Health Department saying that I needed to take my daughter to St. Luke's Hospital ASAP. And if I didn't get her there within a certain amount of time, they would have the police arrest me for child neglect. Like, what? So I'm freaking out. You know, I have to leave my job, go get my daughter, and we made it there. And she had a lead level of 42. There was no way that we could know this. There were no symptoms, especially in children that young. But she was chelated for 7 days. So imagine an 18-month-old baby having to sit still with an IV in her hand 24 hours a day for 7 days. At that time, Orange County Health Department did have a program for families in which they moved you out of your house into what they called a lead-safe house. I do not believe that program exists today, but you were able to stay there until you found alternate living arrangements or had your pipes removed. So the latter was not a possibility. So we were not able to go back into that house. We had to move into a new house. And, you know, on top of her health, just, you know, the move was compounding stress. And it was an experience I will never, ever forget. But also there was a fear that the lead would seep into her bones. And that was, I can't even describe the feeling that I had. And, but she's okay. She's gonna be 24 in a couple of months. But I wonder sometimes because she developed cysts. So I wonder if there's any correlation between the two, but I'm happy that Newburgh Clean Water Project, which I am a part of, I just happened to look back in some notes, and we first had this conversation in the summer of 2017, and we created and hosted 4 community circles around this subject. So I'm very happy to be a part of it, very honored to be working with a group of people who are concerned about the community. And I'm looking forward to the outcome and the success of our movement.
That's true, Gabrielle. I remember those water circles so well. Just at the beginning of when Newburgh Clean Water Project was initially formed. We also have Charmaine Morrison here from Earth Justice, and they are the legal eagles who are walking us through this case. Charmaine, can you tell us a little bit about how the EPA ever thought to relax these rules and why they would do that?
Thanks, Tamsin. Hi, everyone. That's a great question. Yeah, so the original lead and copper rule, which regulates lead in drinking water across the United States, was promulgated in 1991, and it wasn't health protective at the time. And so people were pushing for health protective changes to it for a long time, including under Obama. But ultimately, water utilities who don't want to pay for replacing lead service lines held sway. So, we filed this challenge because, among other things, EPA is slowing down the rate of replacement of lead service lines across the country, which is unacceptable in our opinion. And Gabrielle's story really illustrates just like the heartbreaking consequences of that. Yeah, we just filed the lawsuit a week and a half ago. I think, as some of you may have seen, the lead and copper rule is high on the Biden administration's list of rules that they that they're reviewing, and they're considering, redoing anyway. And so it remains to be seen what's going to happen in the litigation and with the rule, but we are fighting hard for a more health protective regulation.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that. You never know. Would the Biden administration have put this on the top of their list if there wasn't a lawsuit pending? We will never know. Jeannie Polycarp, I want to introduce you as well. Jeannie's a member, one of the steering committee members of Newburgh Clean Water Project, and she is welcoming any local residents who have a health story, either regarding lead or PFAS. PFAS is a little bit more difficult to know whether, we haven't had enough time to really figure out if a health issue might be related to PFAS. But in speaking with people around the community, I know that a lot of people have a story to tell about lead in the water. And I just wanted to get Jeannie to say hi. Unmute yourself for a second, Jeannie, and say hi.
Everyone.
So Jeannie will be collecting those stories and interviewing people. If you have any interest in that, or someone, or you have an aunt or an uncle or a nephew who would like to tell their story, please reach out to us at Newburgh Clean Water Project. Probably easiest to do it on Facebook, and we will definitely get in touch. Any questions for Gabrielle or for Charmaine? I'm looking at a comment from Jess Mullen talking about Kingston. Lead pipe remediation that happened in Midtown Kingston was very poorly publicized 3 years ago. And yeah, pointing out that it's so imperative that there is a lead test requirement for daycares. Charmaine, I believe that was a rule that was slightly softened under these new lead and copper rules. The daycare testing, didn't they still have to test, but they didn't actually have any mandate to remediate?
I see my colleague Suzanne Novak is on the line, and not to put her on the spot, but she might be able to speak to that specific issue better than I can.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Suzanne Novak, also an attorney at Earth Justice. I work with Charmaine and Newburgh Clean Water Project on this case challenging the lead and copper rule. So the federal lead and copper rule for the first time required lead testing in daycares and schools. And so many people do believe that that is a step forward, and in some ways it is a step forward. But there is confusion. Some people say it's a step backwards because when you have some of these steps that aren't well done, it brings everybody comfort. They think they're being protected, and these steps are not well done. So they don't require any changes to be made. They don't even require, if a faucet tests with a lead exceedance, that it be turned off. There are some legal aspects to that. So for example, there have been cases about that the federal government can't necessarily tell a state school what to do. But there could be requirements about more transparency, have it posted online, and at least shut it off, even if they can't require them to replace it. And in addition, EPA has a guidance document called the 3 Ts, and it's guidance for what schools should be doing to test for and protect their students and the teachers from lead. And the requirements under the lead and copper rule do not even follow EPA's own guidance of how often to test and where to test. So that is very, very disappointing. And another problem with the lead and copper rule overall is what I just referred to, which is about kind of this false security. It's not well explained to the public, and there's a 15 parts per billion lead action exceedance level. And so most of the public, we would think, you're like, oh, if this is the level that's an exceedance, it must be safe below that. And there's no safe level of lead. And because the government does not explain this well to the public, people are lulled into a sense of thinking, oh, there's a law, it must be protecting me. And it's not. It's a very complicated law. And like Charmaine said, you know, it was not effective when it was enacted. It's been 30 years. It's still not effective. And what they did here was just nibble around the edges in improvements. And then in the most important aspect, lead service line replacement, decided to reduce the rate at which they need to do it. So really is very disappointing. But that's why we're here to fight.
Exactly. Thanks, Suzanne, for clarifying it. I think it's one of those subjects that, because it has been fought for so long, I think it's kind of diminished in the public eye. Everyone assumes, well, this must not be a problem. But here we are in a historic district, historically protected, in, you know, and we're not alone, certainly not in New York State, with living in these historic houses, and the problem still exists.
One thing, I'm sorry, I just want to make one clarification, is just in terms of schools and daycares, New York is actually fortunate, it has a pretty strong state law. New York is allowed to have stronger laws than the federal law. And they do have a strong law about testing in schools. And there's a bill right now in the state legislature to strengthen it even more. So that is great for New York students and people who work in schools. But the other provisions for the rest of the nation who don't have stronger state rules, it's unfortunate for them.
And I do have a question here, and I don't know if you would know the answer to this. This is something that we should look at. This is probably regarding our state. This is a Department of Health question, maybe. Do you happen to know what the cutoff age is for children to be lead tested? Gabrielle remembers that it was 8. Gabrielle, did you mean that children started to be tested at age 8?
No, if they would test the children before they were enrolled, I believe, in kindergarten, and test them up to age 8. But after that, you would have to ask for it, and depending on your health insurance, you could have it or pay out of pocket. So I'm just wondering if New York State has changed the age in which it's required before children are entered into school, they have to be lead tested up to a certain age. So every year they would be tested and then cut off. So if your child is 10, it's not required anymore, but he could still be exposed. He or she could still be exposed.
So Tamsin, I can hop in if you want. Statewide, all children at ages 1 and 2 are required, are supposed to be tested for lead, and the pediatrician should be writing a script for that, and it should be covered. And it is covered across all private insurances and Medicaid. However, if you have a history or you live in a high-risk neighborhood because of the age of the infrastructure, you can request a lead test. I'm not sure why there would be a cutoff at age 8. I can look into that, but it is absolutely critical. And in fact, we also got, we wrote into our for the multi-site health study, we will also be measuring for lead in all of our adults and children that are enrolled. But it is critical that the babies at 1 and 2 get tested because of the long-term effects and because it can stay in their bodies for a very long time. With that, but I can look at the upper age, but you should have the ability through the county health department to get a test if you request it because of where you live. And I can try and find and send them on to TAMPSON to distribute what the rules are and how to go about advocating for that, because this is an environmental justice issue. This is this whole issue with lead. This is what happened in Flint. This is Michigan and here, and this levels should not be high at all. And there are no safe levels. I absolutely agree with that, with lead.
Thank you so much, Erin. And yes, we will keep everyone apprised. I've just corrected Jeannie's email in the chat, but you can always reach out to us via Facebook if you're still part of that. And we will keep you guys apprised of what is going on with both the lawsuit and your options for lead testing in City of Newburgh if you suspect that your water supply might be contaminated with lead. Very, very serious. And
hi, can I interrupt?
Sure, who's speaking?
Hi, it's Linda Jansen. I work with the Orange County Department of Health, the Lead Safe Orange program, actually.
Hi, Linda, how are you?
Good, how are you? The age goes up to age 6 in Orange County for the lead testing.
And then beyond that, it's up to the parents.
If the child, the Orange County stops case managing the children, but the mother and father are left with literature telling them, depending on the rate of the lead in the child, to go for regular checkups and get the lead tested. Sometimes the doctors don't like to test the kids for lead because the insurance won't cover it. Right. And they have to get they have to have 2 tests before they're 2 years old. And the problem with that is it's based on what the parents tell the doctor during this very short interview when the doctors ask them questions about the house. And I could tell you, I wanted to see exactly what the questions the doctors are asking, whether they should do a blood test or not. So I took my niece to the doctor, and the house they live in is very old. And there was some chipping paint around the windows on the front porch, but the windows could never be opened because it was so old, they just never opened. And when he was asking me about the house, I told him the age of the house, and I said, I pretended I was my sister. My husband's a painter, so the inside's always painted. There's a couple windows that are painted shut, but we don't bother with them. And he asked about my niece's appetite, and I told him, her appetite was good, there was really no problems. He decided not to do a lead test because of my answers I gave him. And then I said, I told him why I was there. I wanted to have a lead test, whether the answers that I was giving him or not, because parents, when they go to the doctor's office, are sometimes afraid to answer the questions because it might not be the answer that they should give the doctor, or they try to figure out how should they answer a doctor's question.
And Linda, this also goes back to housing insecurity. If you get your landlord in trouble and your place is condemned, where are you going to live? I got to tell you, I do that. The landlords are pretty good in Newburgh with me. I can't tell you, I don't think I've had a problem with a landlord getting a house fixed I've been with the county for over 20 years. Maybe in the very beginning, there was a couple, but they own multiple properties, and
they knew once we got into one apartment in a multi-family building, we'd get into the other apartments. But they had to get it done, because then you dangle the fact that the kid could get sick and that they could be sued. And then they said yes. And I also wanted to let everybody know that I participated in, I don't know the exact name of the agency that came to Newburgh with the PFAS. We went around the neighborhoods, they sent out letters, and the people who didn't send the letters back, we actually took them to the houses to see if they could find out why the residents who had a little bit of PFOs in their system didn't respond to the letter. So they were very nice people too.
Linda, that is so great. I with your permission, I've taken down your phone number. I'd love to speak with you more about this. I have a few people from Newburgh have mentioned to me that when their property was getting lead tested, a water sample typically was not taken. So
no, because we can't test the
with
water. We don't have the test for we only have the XRF, and that has to be on like a solid surface. But let me tell you another interesting story about the lead with the water.
You know, Linda, Linda, I have 2 more guests to get to.
Okay,
tonight.
all right.
So I would love to do more of a session just on this subject. And I think you have so much valuable information. Is there a way that people with questions about lead can get in touch with you, maybe by email?
Yeah.
What's your email address? And I'll put it in the chat.
It's LJANSEN at orangecountygov.com.
And Orange County spelled out?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Orange County Gov is one word.
Okay.
And then .com. Okay.
Thank you so much for your comments tonight. That really sheds a lot of.
I've been involved in everything you were talking about. The soil, the water, the paint, everything.
We want to keep you involved. That is so great. Does anyone else have any questions for either Gabrielle, Charmaine, or Suzanne regarding the lawsuit, regarding lead in their water at home? You can always reach out to us. Again, I put Jeannie's correct email address in the chat now if you have a health story that you would like to share with us. And we have such a jam-packed meeting tonight. But again, I mean, that's what it is, living in an environmental justice community. We're not just dealing with one thing, we're dealing with 4 things. So the next person I'd love to introduce tonight is Michele McKeon. She heads up Newburgh Mutual Aid, who have been responding to this COVID emergency in an amazing way. Welcome, Michele. Will you unmute yourself?
I unmuted myself, but I'm just heading home, so I don't want to make anybody car sick with my driving. So I will keep my delightful, lovely little picture up there if that's okay with everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I've loved listening to all the work being done. I live in the city of Newburgh, and my house was built in 1926. So I found myself thinking, maybe I should just take a look at my pipes. So it was very, very helpful. So I am the Chief Operating Officer for RECAP, which is the Regional Economic Community Action Program. And we are the state designated anti-poverty agency. So what that means is that in 1965, when RECAP was created, we were created by President Johnson as a response to poverty in the United States. So CAP agencies, community action programs, or they're also known as CAAs, community action agencies, exist in most communities. Some, like Ulster and Sullivan, have one agency covering both counties. RECAP, for most of the time it's been in existence, covered the western side of the county. And then there was another community action agency in the city of Newburgh before my time, but that agency apparently had some issues and the state closed them, and they asked RECAP to take over the entire county. So in 2014, 15, RECAP officially became the CAP agency for the entire county, including the city of Newburgh. And we've always had a presence in the city of Newburgh. We run the parole reentry program. We have housing here, so we have case management. And we've always had an emergency food closet. In 2018, a tornado hit the city of Newburgh, and we were very lucky that our spot on Broadway was one of the only places in a city that was 92% out of power. Our office had power. So we opened our doors at 7 a.m. the next morning, and we didn't close them again until that Saturday night. And we realized quickly that in addition to needing places to charge things or get flashlights or, just to kind of connect with other people, we realized that food insecurity was a huge issue, that people really were hurting for food. So we started just bringing food in. So on Wednesday, our cafe made, to-go lunches and dinners for anybody who came by. On Thursday, we had a massive barbecue with the community. The Office of Veterans Affairs gave us 2 grills. ShopRite brought us hot dogs and hamburgers and rolls, and we just grilled literally all day long. Friday, we did a combination of our cafe and some barbecuing. And then on Saturday, we did a massive brunch, and we just kind of lined everything up. And every single day, it was hundreds of people needing something to eat. So as the pandemic started to, become a reality in March, my CEO, Charlie Quinn, and I started to talk about what we were going to do to address food insecurity. So one of the things we did was we partnered with Office of the Aging and our Mill Street Cafe, which is workforce development. It teaches people professional skills, culinary skills, and we target people who are recently released from incarceration, people who are unemployed, underemployed, on long-term welfare benefits. We started cooking hot meals for Office of the Aging, and we delivered 187 meals per day for Office of the Aging around the county. At about that same time, we had kind of gathered at 2 Alice's with a group of women, including my friend Melanie Collins from Link, to talk about what is the city's response, because during the tornado, the city did not have a great response to food insecurity. So we figured, if people are going to get fed, we should probably step up and be the ones to do it so that there is at least a plan. So working out of the building that Melanie owns, High Point, her organization Link owns that and is working with Rubco to develop it. We started getting deliveries from the Food Bank of the Hudson Valley and delivering food to folks every single week. It wasn't like, hey, here's 30 deliveries. It was 300 deliveries a weekend. It was 550 deliveries a weekend. And we had so many wonderful community partners. I don't know if you guys know Angela from Shapiro's, but they gave us their truck, like not for one weekend, but like multiple weekends. And they gave us drivers, and those drivers delivered packages or food packages for us. Catholic Charities helped us out. Random good volunteers would come with their pickup trucks and help us deliver food. So we've been doing that since March 19th, and we continue to do it now. And Linda Jansen, who I heard speaking earlier, is one of our volunteers, and she comes and she packs food and she breaks down boxes, which she is expert at. And we are still doing between 200 and 250 packaged meals a week. We are now out of the old Restore, on Washington Street. We work really closely with the Armory, to really kind of get a handle on who's feeding, how many people are being fed, is there still a gap in services? I think that it's great, all the work that individual and grassroots organizations are doing. but there really needs to be a much better system-wide, I'm a social worker, right? So I look at macro problems, a system-wide response to food insecurity. And probably one of my favorite and most frustrating moments was when I'm on the food with the county, begging them for food because we were getting really low and the food bank wasn't sure when they were going to have food, and they have been great. And I said to them, we have 550 people on a waiting list, and I was asked by the county, wow, Michele, that's really incredible. What are you going to do about it? And I was thinking, okay, not my job, but okay, we'll figure this out. And we did, and we have figured it out every week since. As we talk about social justice and as we talk about, how to respond as a community, making sure that the basic needs of our community members are met is foundational. And if we're talking about, as we do in my organization, the social determinants of health and equity around those things, we in our agency have committed not to let the system fail our communities. So as a community action agency, we have a really good opportunity to be as fluid and as flexible as we need to be. And my boss has been unbelievably generous with my time because, as the chief operating officer of an organization, most of them do not spend Friday and Saturdays, delivering food or handing out food. But he has allowed me to continue to do that as a response to this pandemic. So I'm very lucky I work with who I work with and where I work because I love what I do. And I just want to thank Tamsin and everybody for having me tonight just to explain a little bit about our response in our community.
You've just been such an inspiration to so many of us in the community, and I think you've given hope to so many residents here. So has the COVID epidemic, has that kind of uncovered an existing reality for Newburgh for you? Was that something that always existed that we just didn't altogether see?
I think it's always been here, and I think it's something that we hadn't recognized probably the level of, but I also think the pandemic uncovered it, yes, but the long-term fallout from this pandemic has not yet begun because we have been thankfully buoyed by eviction moratoriums and enhanced unemployment, and while there's still a long way to go, we still have a cliff that we're gonna fall off at some point, and I believe it's going to get worse unless we put some stopgap measures locally in place and addressing the need for folks to have food. When we were delivering to seniors, our volunteers were amazing, and when they found that the meal from yesterday was still out front, they called a caseworker, and the caseworker checked in. And at one point, we found one of our seniors on the floor and had to call the police and an ambulance. And luckily, she survived. But, there are a lot of people who don't have that kind of advocacy. And Linda, just so you know, the health department gives out my personal cell phone number on a regular basis to help people with food insecurity. And we have a lot of people not connected to services. And how do we connect people to services in a way that will help them create self-sufficiency so that they are not scrambling for food, right? We have to do a better job making sure people realize there are services out there to help them address these issues.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michele. It makes one think, Gabrielle Hill, I'm looking at you. Are there funds elsewhere which could be diverted to helping people have safe homes and secure food sources? Thanks so much, Michele. And I could talk about this all night, and I'm sure that everyone has a bunch of questions. Is the best way to get in touch with you or to volunteer for food service through your Facebook page, or is there a better way?
So yeah, if you go to the Newburgh Mutual Aid group, you can certainly put in any requests or questions there. You can reach me on Facebook Messenger. And Tamsin, please feel free to share my email and my cell phone number in the chat. And I can certainly do that when I stop driving. But yeah, you know, if there's somebody in need, we will absolutely make sure that that we get to them and totally address their immediate food need, but then ongoing, you know, connect them with services who maybe can provide a little bit of stability.
Yeah, I think that's a part of this process that a lot of people would like to be involved in, is the phase 2. As you say, it's going to get worse before it gets better, and maybe creating some more structural solutions to what always has been a problem, not only here in Newburgh, but in so many communities like ours. I will put your email in the chat, and thanks so much, Michele.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for having me, and thank you for the work everybody is doing. You know, it's not just one of us. You know, it literally takes a village to raise a village. So for everybody's hard work and tireless nights, it is very, very much appreciated.
Back at you. I hate to say goodbye to Michele, but we are just we're going to run over tonight, unsurprisingly, guys, because I have another very important person to introduce you to, and that is Ed Lawson. He is taking over as co-chair of the Restoration Advisory Committee. And the reason the Restoration Advisory Committee is important, for those of you who don't know, is that is a group of civilians, of community members who work with the Department of Defense and the Air National Guard to clean up our watershed. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, and welcome. Happy New Year to everyone, albeit belated. I'm excited to work after Chuck Thomas. He's done an amazing job, he and Mary and the others on the RAC committee, of really establishing the operating procedures, that the guideline for us to be able to engage in this work. And it's my pleasure to take on the mantle and just be able to move us from where we are to bring life to the operating agreement that that Chuck and his team actually got signed. I come to this work via my organization, Family and Community Engagement. We're a New York State certified minority business enterprise. We support and work collaboratively with organizations across multiple sectors and strengthening those organizations and with respect to their services and connections to youth, families, and communities. A large portion of my work was spent initially in the space around fatherhood. We secured a contract with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to operate the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse. In that capacity, for that contract, I was the community outreach coordinator for the clearinghouse. And some of the seminal projects that I oversaw was our relationship with the Ad Council to provide a media campaign. I also engaged in, during the Obama administration, something called Fatherhood Buzz, which was a barbershop initiative that we operated for about 3 years during the clearinghouse, where we went to specific barbershops across the country each quarter with a mission to utilize the barbers as fatherhood ambassadors to let folks know in those communities where resources were, where information was, to help them, whether it was through parole or reentry, or whether it was for workforce development. The other thing that we did was we operated a social media platform, Facebook, and we were only outpaced by Michelle Obama's social media at the time. We got our numbers up to over 400,000 followers. And so I want to bring some of that work to this work with the water space. The last thing I will share with you is in 2018, I wrote a grant for the Newburgh Community Center, which is based in Yonkers, around President Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative. We were one of 10 agencies to secure that funding that year, and we operated the Obama Foundation My Brother's Keeper initiative in Yonkers, and we had a unique relationship and partnership with the Westchester County Community Jail. We were able to set up a separate wing for boys and young men of color that were the Obama wing incarcerated, and they got separate uniforms. They were given training to reach industry recognized certifications. They received their high school diplomas. So we worked in various capacities in the jail, in the community, in middle school, and in high school. And so we're really excited about that work. And then finally, the work that I did, in fact, last week, that was maybe 2 weeks ago, on June 13th, I partnered with the Ulster County Sheriff to launch, with the support of the Verizon Foundation, they've provided us with some funding to launch a diversity, equity, inclusion framework where we were helping law enforcement officers in Ulster County, including using the sheriff as the model to help them to become more diverse, equitable, and inclusive communities. And it went really well. Verizon participated. We had former Governor David Patterson, as well as Valerie White, who is the executive director of LISC, which is an organization that provides billions of dollars in funding to communities like Newburgh and Kingston to support them in raising the poverty level and raising the education level, creating more access to opportunities for families. And so our hope is to use all of those experiences to better engage and better inform people about the issues that are impacting their water. We know that currently there's an interim stormwater management system that is dealing with the PFAS, but we also know that when it rains excessively, or if there's a real heavy snow and there's a lot of water that melts, that system overflows and there's too much water, and because it overflows, the system is shut down, and so the PFAS is able to flow out into the Hudson River. And so yes, we're on a different water line, so the water is safe to drink in Newburgh, but it's still polluting sort of the Hudson River. So we want to be able to activate the voices of the community. And again, I want to try to use my experiences both at the federal level and at the local level to help do that. In fact, even talking to Tamsin and Chuck and Mary and others, even Dr. Bell today, talking about strategies to engage social media, strategies to engage the school district and all the municipalities that are affected by the PFAS issue so that people know what's going on. The other challenge that we have is that we have to create language and information in digestible fashions, whether that is transcreation. That's a term that I was just sharing with Dr. Bell this evening. A lot of times we want to translate language from English to Spanish or to whatever other language we want to translate it to. But what I found in the work that I was doing with the federal government is that you have to do more than just translate. You have to transcreate. Different cultures, different ethnicities, different vibes of people need to hear information in a way that they can digest it, in a way that they can understand it. Therefore, the term transcreate, so that we can speak directly to the people that need to be spoken to and they can hear it, use that information, and then be activated to advocate for themselves. So we're excited. It's a lot of work and not a lot of time, and we don't get paid, but we're excited to be able to do this work for our community. And my agency, FACES, we really thrive on this. In fact, we envision a world where individuals, families, organizations can engage and embrace the practices of and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. We want to understand and live in a community where differences are validated and cherished, and where each stakeholder is valued, respected, supported, treated fairly, and given equal access to the tools and resources and information necessary for them to achieve success or to achieve or be fully actualized.
Wow, Ed. I feel like not only are you intersectional, you're inspirational also. And, I think a lot of people here will be aware that the Restoration Advisory Committee can be dissolved at any time by the Department of Defense or the Air National Guard. if we don't have enough community participation. So they set this incredible bar for the volunteers who sit on that board. Not only do they have to familiarize themselves with all the technical data that these agencies produce about the watershed cleanup, but they also have to get people to come to the meetings. So I'm going to post the link for the meeting, and I'm going to urge you guys to come and ask questions at the end of it. Ed, what do you hope that we're going to be achieving this year? What's going to be different this year than 2020 in terms of how far we're going to get with this cleanup?
Well, so what we understand is, and what we keep hearing is that this is a process that's going to take a long time. They have not even completed the study to determine exactly what the contaminations are. And so, but what we will do, so Tamsin, what we would try to do is to give voice and to empower our community so that we can advocate for ourselves. So it's not good enough to say, oh, well, it's going to take some time. We'll get back to you. We want to know, we want to be heard, and we want the RAC to be responsive. When will the study be done? We want to be able to inform the RAC around, and that's why we're so excited about the partnership with Dr. Bell and that study, because we want to be able to provide solutions and suggestions. Right now, it's we're doing our best, but we're really hamstrung. We want to be able to have that information created, and we want to be able to engage the population, create, as I was sharing earlier. Even Dr. Bell and I were just spitballing. We were talking about the way people receive information today is really in bite-sized chunks and in videos. And so what can we do to inform the public in a way that they will receive the information and be able to process it and advocate for themselves? So that's what we're going to see. We're going to try to press for. And we can, and I'm glad that you made the call, Tamsin, because we need the public. When the more people that show up and the more people that give voice to our concerns, that's when they will listen. That's when they will hear us, because we will have the strength of not only data, both qualitative and quantitative, but we will have the strength of our voice. And the other thing that I will just add, we were talking, and that's why I raised the issue about the health disparities in the Office of Minority Health, because this is a social, environmental, social justice issue, and we can advocate for that. And I'll just share one last thing. During Donald Trump's administration on August 14th, you can go check it. He signed a law into bill that was presented, signed a bill into law that was presented by Frederica Hill out of Florida and the Senator, Marco Rubio. This bill is called the Commission for the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. Now, I know that it says Black men and boys, but what it did is it's an intentional effort for the federal government to look at the impact through health, through education, through employment, through other issues that impact Black men and boys, because historically the data suggests that they were treated, and they were impacted largely. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because that is how we start raising the level of voice around our issues, by data, by qualitative and quantitative data, and by our voice of advocacy. I was trying to go fast, Tamsin, because I know we were running out of time.
You went fast, and I was just seeing whose mic was still on. So that's great, and you are such an inspiration. So I have noted down in the chat that if anybody wants to be part of a social media campaign, they should reach out through us, and maybe we could set up something specifically for the RAC. I've also added that link to the actual event, and I'm going to encourage everyone to come. I'm so excited to see the direction that Ed leads the Restoration Advisory Committee in this year. And is there another way that they should get in touch directly with you, Ed, if they felt inspired by your words tonight?
Yeah, I can be reached at edlaw, ed.faces, F-A-C-E-S, or edlaw, E-D-L-A-W dot faces, F-A-C-E-S, at outlook.com. My website is www.nyfaces.com.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a meeting. I think we have quite a few calls to action tonight. To check out Dr. Bell's website and stay abreast of what's going on with the health study in Newburgh. Reach out to Jeannie regarding your health stories regarding lead, and watch this space in terms of the lawsuit that we have versus the EPA with lead. Maybe President Biden will just fix that for us. That would be nice. Volunteer for Newburgh Mutual Aid, either packing boxes of food, delivering food, or being part of a longer term solution. And don't forget to come to the RAC meeting this February 3rd. Anthony Grice, do you want to add anything to that, seeing as you're on the RAC as well?
Boom, boom, boom. Oh, hi. So I didn't realize that people were able to speak. And so that's why I was sending some things in the chat. So first of all, I want to start off by thanking you so very much for putting this well-run and much needed program together. Besides being on the RAC, the Restoration Advisory Committee, and I am looking forward to Mr. Lawson's leadership on that. I'm also on that other committee, with the University of Albany that was mentioned. And so I'm looking forward to that meeting next week. And of course, I'll bring all of that information to Newburgh Clean Water Project and then to the community at large. You know, now that we have, I'm just gonna get political just for a second, that Chuck Schumer now has been paying attention to what's been happening in the city of Newburgh, and now that he's in that leadership role, so hopefully we'll be able to apply more pressure to get cities like Newburgh, you know, or due compensation for PFAS and all of those other things that we need. And one last thing, and I'm not sure if it was part of this conversation, but I'm going to end on this. Stop Dan Scammer.
Thank you, Mr. Grice. You know I love it when people say that. And that's something definitely that we'll be talking about in later meetings. But as we started, so I'd like to finish with Miss Angela Shapiro, if she is ready, has a few words for us. Angela, did you have a poem?
We had talked earlier, and we're all still on such a high from Amanda Gorman, our youth poet laureate, who was extraordinary. So I had pulled a poem from Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, which is a phenomenal book. I'll put the link on here. But I was just thinking, after hearing Michele speak, and this is such a community activated event, I just wanted to share some words and sentiments from a Spanish woman in our community, Mrs. Ramos, who wrote me this beautiful letter in Spanish after receiving the comida, the food boxes that they did this year. And such an accolade to them. It was anyone who needed food got food. That's it. No questions asked. And her husband had brought home COVID, gave her COVID, and she wrote me this long letter about how she would get up every night at midnight and she would cook from midnight to 6 a.m. so she wasn't around the rest of her family to contaminate them, because it was the very early stages of COVID and we didn't know what it was. And then she would go to bed and stay away from everybody for the remainder of the day. And the day we delivered the food box, which it was no contact delivery, she was masked up and she's like, I was going to go to the store and I knew I shouldn't go because I have COVID, but I had to feed my family. And it is like Ed brought to attention, there's all these different cultural, social infrastructures, and him trying to find a way to connect is beyond beautiful, because that's the brilliance of Newburgh, is the diversity of culture here and the diversity of amazing humans. And she opened the door and there's a box on her doorstep. So of course she's just like, Dios de Benegas, God bless you, is amazing. But I don't know, and I haven't heard Michele say if they've been able to antiquate the numbers of people they kept in with COVID. And that benefit, besides feeding people, there were so many people who told us, because we delivered to so many customers and so many people in Newburgh of the Spanish community, that they didn't even feel worthy of receiving a box, that we have COVID. No, we shouldn't get it. It's actually like, yes, you're the ones who should get it because you need to stay home. Like, we come, we drop off, we go, that's it. And I just, if I can find it, I'll send it and share with the group, because it was just a beautiful, beautiful handwritten letter. And it just, that had such impactfulness. It was just beautiful.
Well, and Angela, and I was so funny. I didn't realize you were part of the meeting when I was talking earlier. But
I didn't know Linda Jansen was either when I said her name, and I'm like, Linda.
But just a quick piggyback on that. We got calls from people who were calling for someone else. No, I'm fine, but you should really give it to this person. Meanwhile, in doing a little bit more questioning, we realized they didn't have food either, but they were so worried about their neighbor or their mom or their friends. And we still see that when people come to 125 Washington, they're picking up for themselves, but they're also picking up for their neighbor who just got out of the hospital or whose family left. And so that kind of community continues. And I'll just share one quick full circle story. So we have been delivering hot meals for the seniors in the house, and we were delivering a food box to kind of keep the family going for the week. But it was all contactless. So we put it on the porch, and then we would back off and we would go. In September, we had a man come to the door of our office, which stayed open throughout the pandemic. And so I greet him at the door, and he's crying, and he's very agitated, and he's very upset, and he just continues to repeat, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. Okay, what do you need? What do you need? My father just passed away. My mother from COVID. My mother's in a rehab. She has COVID. I'm all by myself. I don't know what to do. So we go through this entire thing. We surround him with love. We surround him with services. We get him the help he needs, only to find out at the end of the day, when I finally saw his name, it was his family that we were delivering to. And to find out that his parents didn't make it, was a gut punch to the rest of us. But he knew where to come, and he knew how to get help. And even though we were devastated by the loss of his parents, the fact that we could give back to him reminded in my entire staff at our Newburgh office, for recap, this is why we do the work. This is why we keep our office open. This is why we have our staff in the office, greeting our neighbors, because it's that important. Being able to feed our community is one thing, but being able to serve our community is a bigger blessing.
Thank you so much for that, Michele, Angela, everyone who's taken part tonight. With your permission, I am going to send a quick email to everyone that registered tonight to remind them of the potential actions to come out of tonight. I hope you all feel inspired and called to become a doer if you're not already in this community, this very active community. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all for your participation tonight and in everything that you're doing, and for creating such an amazing community in Newburgh, New York. Thanks, you guys. And thanks for staying around, even though we went over.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. You can unmute and say good night if you want.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, amazing.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Good job, Tamsin.
Good job, Gabrielle.
Fab. Yeah, thank you, Gabrielle. Oh my God.
Everyone was
Hi,
so
Deborah.
inspired.
Gabrielle, you're something else. Miss you.
I miss you,
Yes,
love.
you are.